everyone. It is so lovely to be here today. Um, I've got on my first slide here, I've got a QR code. That's for my copy of my slides if you need to or prefer to look at them on your own device for accessibility reasons. Give people a second to grab that. I'll just ask a quick question. How many people in the room today have had their work assessed or tested for accessibility? Hands up, or ask someone to raise their hand on your behalf. I'm seeing about half, and that's about what I expected. For those of you who haven't had that experience before, this is kind of my line of work. I help people make sure that they're meeting whatever accessibility standard is appropriate for the work that they do and the products that they're making. I'm a big dork. I love standards. This is a perfect line of work for me. Um, and as I said, from that lovely warm welcome from Pat, I've uh, I've just realized that I missed my acknowledgement of country, so that's what made me kind of pause here. I'm just going to stop and do that now, and then pick up where I left off. So I have travelled to be here today, and I'm just going to blame jet lag. I've come from Wajjuk Budja Noongar, which is the lands of the Wajjuk people in Noongar territory. And same as with the Wadjuri people and Indigenous people all across Australia, sovereignty was never ceded. And so I pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands that I live on and travel to. So before I started racing away with my talk, where was I up to? What I do? Yes. So I work with a lot of the people, some of the people in the room today. Andrea mentioned earlier today about working with Telstra, and it's been a real pleasure to be part of watching and measuring the way that they have leveled up their accessibility over time. It is really difficult to do that in a large organisation. But I've also worked with small independent artists, standalone kiosks, web apps, mobile apps, software, you name it, I've had a look at it. And the thing that I've learned is that people who come to me for accessibility are sometimes it's experts. They have in-house experts like they do at Telstra. And they just really need help with the little bits with like, oh, can you just measure this for us, measure our progress? Can you help us with a hairy question? But most of the people I work with are people who are not familiar with accessibility or haven't done anything with it before. And in my experience, the organizations which have got the best results, even without knowing anything about accessibility, are the people who include the clients who have included designers as part of the early stages of their project. And this is really super important to me because I'm looking at everybody coming into me and I'm like, yes, I'm going to measure your accessibility. Oh, this one's quite good. They said they didn't know anything about accessibility. They're doing okay. That's because, as people have mentioned already, so much of good design is accessible design. It's these things that you might take for granted as a designer and that you might let other people talk you out of. You're like, oh, it's just design. I guess maybe it doesn't matter if the product works. Maybe it doesn't matter. It does matter. These things are super important. And I spent a lot of time wondering why it is that the ones with designers were so much better than the ones without. I came across this quote from a guy named Dan Saffer. I don't know anything about Dan Saffer other than he made this quote and I really like it. It really resonated with me. It says there are 3 great design themes: making something beautiful, making something easier, and making something possible. And this to me is the core of accessibility as well. These are the things that we're trying to achieve. So what I'm going to do is try and tell you the ways in which accessibility and design intersect and hopefully persuade you that you kind of already know a lot about accessibility. You might need to fill in some gaps, but you should absolutely be taking charge and claiming this area of your work. So the first thing is that accessibility makes things possible. This is a lot of what you've heard today already. People are talking about the ways in which the barriers that they've faced, the things that they've encountered. You might have experienced some things as well. If you've ever been using a web app or a mobile app and you're out in the sun and you realize, I cannot see any of these buttons. I could see them when I was on the couch indoors last night. Can't see them now. The sunlight washes out the contrast of the buttons, makes them difficult to see. Another example, I've made a fakey little form here. I think a lot of people will have had an experience where you're trying to tap a radio button and it's tiny and it's really close to all of the other buttons and you're like, why can't I tap? I just want to tap this button and not the buttons on the other side of it. Why? Other things, you have probably found yourself swearing at a form that's complaining and giving you error messages for typing in your ID number wrong. You're like, you didn't tell me how I was supposed to type it in. I would have done it differently if you'd told me in the first place. These are all accessibility problems. For us, or for me personally, as someone who does not yet have a disability, this is a momentary annoyance. For someone with a disability, this could be a huge blocker. It just stops them from being able to complete the task. This is where accessibility standards come in. And this is the vanilla that Kelly was talking about first up today. This is your baseline level of accessibility. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are the most common and frequent, but if you are not working on web content and your digital product is something different, come see me. There's almost certainly a standard that you could be using instead. And what these standards do is kind of collate and bring together all of this user research from previous years. It's stuff that we already know. And it includes these things like, oh, sunlight is going to wash out the contrast on your thing. You need to have your contrast at a certain level for it to survive the various ways in which people's vision and situation might change it. There's a touch target size that we know to be about right as a minimum. You can just use that size without having to reinvent the wheel and to research, do people like tiny radio buttons or not? No, we know they don't. We can just skip to the end. This is great. It's the same thing with error messages. And this is, again, where we overlap with good design and where you'll all be saying, yeah, you should tell people what they're going to do in the form before you start. That's just common sense. That's just good design. I've measured a lot of websites where that common sense, good design was not there. So we can do this with the standards. Now, I have to say, as much as I love standards, they are written by international committees who need to use them, or people need to use them in courts of law. It's not a fun read. I don't recommend that you whip out WCAG for just a bit of light bedtime reading or anything like that. No one wants to. I get paid to do that. You're not getting paid to do that. Don't do it. But there is understanding documents, and read the bits that are relevant to you. Any accessibility professional would be thrilled to help you understand how these tools, how these standards apply to your work specifically. If you're lucky enough to have an in-house team, go hassle them. They'll be excited, I promise you. I know some of the people. I've been chatting with some of the in-house teams here today. Guess what? I'm sending everyone to you. If you are not lucky enough to have an in-house team, come see me, come see one of the independent consultants. Come to an accessibility meetup. There's no need to struggle with this standard alone. There is so much help available. Also, highly recommended resources. WebAIM's plain language version of WCAG is a very simplified one. It's not going to cut it for a difficult situation, but if you're just like, oh, what was the magic number for contrast again? You can just look that up nice and easy. And in Topia, we have an accessibility. It's not a checklist. It's not a checklist, but it is a list of practical applications of ways of making different types of content accessible, or you can sort and filter it by the job role that you have, so you can pick out just the parts that are relevant for designers. Highly recommend. It is, as much as I love standards, it pains me to say that quite a lot of people with disabilities don't actually care whether or not you've conformed with the 55 success criteria and 5 conformance requirements of WCAG version 2.2 level AA. Rude. Um, I mean, it's my job. A little respect. But quite frankly, why should anyone care? Why should your users care about the standard? Again, that's my job. I have to measure this stuff. No one else cares. People with disabilities, like every other user, what they care about is, can I buy the ticket to the event? Can I join the sports team? Can I pay my phone bill? Can I watch that show on iFear? That's the goal. And this is where we move away from standards. This is an example here, and this is from one of my favorite clients, and this is a beautifully accessible page. It's the middle of a very accessible page. I've cut out the header and the footer, and it's got an in-page nav, and it's got all contrast, and it's got a really, like, if you saw the code for this table, you'd be like, for Andrea with her sexy tables, you're like, that's a sexy table. We love it. Gorgeous. The thing is, if, say, someone who is only uses a keyboard to navigate a website, and perhaps they've got a tremor, perhaps they have low strength or dexterity in their hands. And say they want, I'm just going to have to look down at my slides here and peer down, input, output, product details, table, data cubes, download, the one below the table there. That would take 79 clicks of the tab key to reach. This is on an accessible page that meets WCAG standards. And this is where designers come in handy. Because this is not a standards problem or a compliance problem or a have you done the right thing? Of course you've done the right thing. It's possible to reach that link. Is it a good experience? No, it's horrible. This is where designers have so much to contribute. User research with people with disabilities, co-design with people with disabilities, that's what helps you find out what your users with disabilities need. And it doesn't matter what anybody else's users with disabilities need. It's yours and your product, and you know them better than anyone else does. Talk with them, make them your allies. There are people in this room who know more about, have forgotten more about UX research than I have ever known. So I'm not going to try and pretend to be an expert. The thing that I can tell you about user research is that including people with disabilities supercharges the results. If you have someone like me, an able-bodied person, doing a little, oh, can they find the right button without having to resort to the search? Cool. If I pause for a second over the menu, you can't tell, did I not understand the menu, or was I just itchy for a second? It's hard to tell. Someone who uses a headphone to navigate that menu, however, will probably pause about the same amount of time that I do if they feel itchy. But if they are confused by a menu item, they're going to hesitate for a few minutes. Okay, this is because the cost of making the wrong choice is so high. It's so hard to recover from a mistake. And so the determination to like, well, I better get this right. So as an observer of the user research, you can instantly tell, oh, we got a problem here. This is a usability problem. And as with our nice big sexy tables there, maybe the solution is for that to put the data cube link. It's a weird, unusual link. It doesn't fit in the table. Maybe it goes above the table if it's really popular. Maybe you put it in the table and let people filter and sort. Does it need to be there? Is anyone even clicking it? Is it so weird that people should just email and ask for a copy? I don't know. That's for you and your users to find out. And you already have the skills. Now, I hope that, like with the panel and with all of the people you've met today, that you feel more confident that you can ask questions, that you can include people as part of your work without worrying that you're going to be doing it wrong. But if you were nervous, I can say that usability testing with people with disability is the name of a really excellent talk about getting started with including people with who require assistance to be part of your usability testing. It's by Andrew Arch and Sarah Pulis, my colleagues, and it's part of Inclusive Design 24, which is a regular online conference that is particularly targeted to inclusive design and accessible design. So well worth a look at the other talks as well. I can say also that you get better with practice at including people with disability. The amount of money that I spend on apology drinks for my disabled colleagues, after walking them into doorways, or putting my foot in my mouth and saying terribly embarrassing things. They all still like me. They still like it when I buy them drinks. I'm not gonna lie, but they still work with me. They still like me because they know that I'm showing up and I'm trying, and I learn from my mistakes. I make way fewer mistakes than I used to. You get better at this. The final thing that I want to bring up is that accessibility does make things beautiful. This is mostly true. It's not as true as it should be. A lot of accessible products that are designed with accessibility in mind have all the style and elegance of a CPAP machine. No one wants to use them. They're ugly. Why, though? Why are they ugly? They don't have to be. There's no reason. Something ugly doesn't work better than something that is beautiful. People with disabilities deserve beautiful user experiences. It's not just about getting your vanilla baseline right. That's great. That's your safety net. And that's what I'm here to help you with, is to make sure you're just hitting those minimum compliance marks. But I would love for you all to aim higher than that, to really bring what designers can only bring to the accessibility community. I have a background as a dev. I know the kinds of trouble that devs can get into when we're allowed to write error messages, when we're allowed to pick 32 colors of red to put on those error messages because we didn't think to check the design system. Not saying I've done that. Um, but these are the things that designers can actually bring a unified, cohesive experience. It increases trust. It's necessary. Now, I wish I had a photo of the next thing that I was going to tell you. Um, I don't know what makes a beautiful designer accessible experience. I do actually think that this is something that you all should be talking about amongst yourselves and deciding, and then come and tell me, Miss Compliance Girl, about how you reckon that ought to be done. Um, but one beautiful building accessibility experience that I had was a few years ago, and I went to the National Gallery of Australia in Canberra. Whenever I travel, I like to try and hit up an art gallery. And the escalators had broken and become stairs. People were clustered around it, going slower. People were trying to use the lifts who wouldn't usually use the lifts. It was all getting a bit crowded. And I saw a little sign pointing away to say that there was a wheelchair ramp going up to the second floor. I thought, oh, righto, I'll use the wheelchair ramp then. Easy. Went over to the wheelchair ramp, and I genuinely wish I had taken a photo because I spent half an hour on that wheelchair ramp. And not because it was difficult to use. It was great. It met our minimum compliance building standards for Australia. And the wheelchair users in the room will know that is not as common as it should be. But it had a suitable grading ramp. It had a handrail. It had a turning circle. It was great. It was also very easy to use. It was broad and wide enough that it wouldn't just be one wheelchair user going solo up a tiny ramp. It was like, oh, you could have a friend beside you. Two people could go the other way. Beautiful big turning circle area on the landing. The handrail wasn't just like surgical steel. It was like beautiful polished wood. It was lovely. But the thing that made me slow down and take my time was that the walls were covered in art. And I had to bend down a little bit to read the art. You know, the little plaques that they put on there to, like, tell you who the artist is and what medium? I'm bending down a bit, and it took me a little while to realize, oh, they've hung it at a suitable height for someone who's sitting down, not for someone standing. And I don't think that the curators at the National Gallery of Australia know much about building accessibility other than we should have a ramp. But they do know art. And they went, you know what? If someone in a wheelchair comes to the National Art Gallery of Australia, they probably want to look at some art. So we'll put some art there and we'll make it at a height that's most comfortable and usable and beautiful. And this was just, I spent ages on this. I actually did email the gallery and say, I don't suppose you have a photo of your wheelchair ramp, do you? Haven't heard back. I'm not sure if Grant would have let me add the slide anyway, even if they had. Um, But it's this kind of thing where the intersection of what you are an expert in, the parts that you know really well, what do you bring to accessibility? You don't have to be an expert in every aspect. You just need to know the accessibility aspect of your work, your product. What do you bring? What are your interests? And that's the beautiful thing about it. Um, we all deserve beautiful experiences. Um, why shouldn't we have them? Design is not a frivolous, optional extra. It is foundational to understanding, to having these smooth user experiences, to helping people get shit done. So I would love for all of you to hopefully leave from today not just inspired, but feeling capable to say, you know what, this isn't entirely new to me. I do know how to do this. I do have help. I do have tools. I've got friends and allies in this area. Let's make some beautiful tools with and for the community of people with disability. Make a heap of things possible. I think it'll be great. That's me. As you may have noticed, I do love my standards. Come talk to me about them. But also, don't leave it at that. Have a go. Thank you.